We are still waiting on a quorum. We need one more person to arrive, but there are at least one item that we can take without a quorum. We have a staff member who, this is his final board meeting, and we want to recognize John Lanoka, our Director of Maintenance, who has been an employee of Dash for 8.5 years. And some of you who are newer may not know John as well, because he used to attend all our meetings in person and commuted from Annapolis. So he has some late nights with us. I didn't know you at the time you lived in Annapolis, but Josh, especially now if you were able to watch meeting virtually, or Ray is certainly able to talk about maintenance, we decided that we would give you a break so that you would continue to join us at Dash. So John, if you wouldn't mind coming up here, we have a couple of things for you. And I saw a wonderful picture of John, which I don't know. Do we have that on the slide deck?
Oh, yeah, I can skip ahead.
Well,
Coming back.
we just want to look at how you aged over time, John.
There you go. That's like 1981.
I've been changed a bit.
Where did you get that from?
Don't worry about it. In an archive somewhere, yeah. So John was with the MTA in Maryland for most of your career. And I remember when you came to Dash, we had a longtime maintenance director who retired. Then we had somebody who was there for a fairly short amount of time and left. And we were looking, the organization was looking for somebody who could kind of restore stability. So you were introduced to somebody who was in semi-retirement at the time and was willing to come back for a little while to help stabilize us. And here we are 8.5 years later, and it's been quite a run. John, through COVID, through when you came, we had hybrids and we had older diesel buses. You were instrumental in helping us to make the decision to go back to buying clean diesel. We now have electric. I was in the garage recently and hadn't been in a few years and saw all the changes that were made to allow your workers to get to the top of buses to repair things that are up there. You have seen a tremendous amount of change, and also the vast amount of extra vehicles we had during the shutdown of 2019, which before COVID was probably the defining event of
I told you my earliest bus, you wouldn't believe it.
I told you earlier.
My first bus was worked on was 1968.
Wow, 1968.
GM.
You've seen a lot, and you leave behind a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge and a tremendous amount of respect within the workforce. And you are beloved within the workforce and a great resource asset to Josh, to Ray, to the entire leadership team. And so they wanted to recognize you as you're getting ready to go. So I'm going to read a proclamation that we have for you, and then we have a little gift inside. So it's presented to John Lanoka, whereas the Alexandria Transit Company Dash Board of Directors on this 10th day of May, 2023, have gathered to meet and wish to express recognition and appreciation to John Lanoka for his exemplary service. And whereas John has served admirably in his role as Director of Fleet Maintenance with Transit Management of Alexandria, and whereas John has served his entire career in the field of public transportation, working to provide the highest quality of services to the Alexandria community and to the communities he served previously. And whereas the Dash Board of Directors wishes to express its sincere appreciation to John for his dedication to the outstanding performance of his duties during his tenure. And whereas this proclamation is presented to John to serve as a reminder that although he is retiring from Dash, he will always be a valued member of the Dash family. Now, therefore, I, David Kaplan, Chair of the Alexandria Transit Company, and on behalf of the Dash Board of Directors, do hereby present this proclamation to John Lanoka as a testimonial to the faithful and dedicated services for which he has performed over the past 8.5 years, with our best wishes for a wonderful world. So I'm going to sign this, and then actually I know they have a frame, so actually I'm going to give it back to Beth so it can be presented to you later, but I'm going to let you take your gift home. I'll let you.
Oh, that's really cool.
You can take it out of the box. I got some folks who are going to take pictures of it.
Wow, that is really, really cool.
You don't have the box.
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think Raymond took it.
Raymond's. Yeah.
That's why I'm
Yeah, we
saying
can have you hold it up facing forward.
two, three. Very much.
And one other thing I want to note about John, not entirely related to his Dash responsibilities, but that I learned actually at one of the employee banquets. Back we used to have an evening banquet, and so there were door prizes, a lot of which were donated, really nice prizes our employees could win. And there was this beautiful painting that I wanted to have in my living room, and I was like, I'm ineligible to enter, and I would love to have this. And so I asked somebody, who did it? Where'd you get this painting from? They said John Lanoka painted it. Wow. And there's one in Josh's office as well. It's kind of a water, two of them.
And hoping for a third at some point.
You are a very gifted artist.
I actually flunked art in high school. And now people buy my stuff. It's crazy. But I just want to say thanks to the board, senior staff, and it's been an honor. It really has. To cap my career, 50 years. Thank you.
For a little while,
Yeah,
but
for the summer.
we're gonna try to get you to consult when you, maybe.
Yeah. My phone's there. Josh knows.
Could we all take a picture
Yeah.
together? I think that would be nice to capture that.
That's really cool.
We'll enjoy that. How do you want us to?
Stand up right here. You get right in the middle, John. You don't hide. You can't hide in the back. We'll let everybody else fill in.
Let's look together and either table behind you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. We're gonna have more parties for you. He's not done until the end of the month.
Yeah.
But there's no board meetings for.
So we estimate pricing.
Always be on.
I'm thinking maybe I'll find one on eBay someday.
John's already going back and forth to Florida. He's already.
And you must be
That's
painting,
semi-retired.
you live on the water, so are you paint mostly in Maryland or do you paint a lot in Florida? 'Cause it's-
Actually, I haven't painted yet for, but actually I'm in Pennsylvania too.
Oh,
I'm gonna get it for.
Oh,
I'm not, but I mainly do White House. I don't do people. Just White House.
yeah, they're beautiful. They really are beautiful. Yeah, I'm gonna return this to Beth and then still waiting on Murat and Linda. Well, we can also take up the TransDev contract renewal because that's not an action item. That's just to introduce what's in your packet. So this is, we talked about this a bit last month. We have a management services agreement with First Transit, which is now TransDev, who has provided management services and also has the corporation that essentially holds all the employees except the general manager. So they do all the compliance stuff there and also provide us a lot of expertise in managing the system. So the contract was up for renewal, and so we decided to pursue a one-year extension and see what, especially now that they are kind of a new entity, even though most of the personnel we worked with moved over, would they give us very favorable terms? And we got a 3% increase, which in this economy is quite reasonable. So this would be a one-year agreement. What Josh and I were talking about in the long term, though, is we really need to, we'll have a year to kind of see, has the level of service changed? Are we satisfied with the personnel who are the personnel we have now continue to work on the contract? If we're getting new people, are we happy with them? But there's opportunity to kind of relook at the whole contract going forward in the future. And so what I would like to do is put together a board committee for next fall, winter, and Josh will kind of set the timeline to basically look at, do we do an RFP to get other proposals, and what do we want in that contract? Because Josh has indicated there are some performance metrics and things related to some of the management services that we could really kind of change that would better suit what our needs are as an organization. Josh, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that's straightforward. As you mentioned, there hasn't been any change in the people we work directly with, both on the labor side and on the management consulting side. And what they came to us with is very reasonable. I think it's mentioned in here. I think it's 3% adjustment, which is very, very standard. And my recommendation to the board has been to do that 1 year to allow us the time to see kind of what becomes of it. What's included in the packet is not the full agreement. It's just simply the extension of the existing contract. So it's not a reworking of the existing contract. And then, of course, you don't have to act on this. You can't act, obviously. You can take all the business you want until you have a quorum, but until you have a quorum, you can't actually take action on anything this meeting. So this is fine for next meeting. It's not, there's no time constraints on this for it.
Hey, Josh. Why does it still say First Transit Inc. on here, and not TransDev?
Because TransDev bought all of the First Transit's.
So they're keeping it as First
And they're
Transit?
still, I mean, when I email people, it's still First Transit
Okay,
email. So yeah,
that's good to know. And I'd be I would like to volunteer.
Okay. And Linda just joining us, we're talking about the Transdev contract, and which is basically a 1-year status quo contract at a fairly good only 3% increase. So
Okay,
the recommendation is that we'll adopt that. We could either do that today because we have a quorum now, thankfully.
okay,
as you
sorry.
arrived, or in June. And but we're also putting together a committee because we want to basically look at, as that year will be up and it's a new, new organization. Do we are there things that we want to change about metrics in the contract? Do we want to do a full RFP and actually solicit other proposals? So Matt has volunteered to be on that committee. Would anyone else who's here like to be on the committee? Linda, Ajay, I mean, we'll take as many people as want to be.
Yeah, I don't know who needs to be on the committee, but sure, why not?
Okay. So we've got 3, and I might also suggest, Steve, just be given your operational experience in the industry, would you be willing to be on the committee as well? Because I think you would have a lot of insight to add.
Thank you for asking. To the extent that I can, because I'm also juggling the strategic planning project with Marat. But to the extent that I can help this group out, I'd welcome the opportunity.
Okay. And probably not till fall or winter will be, but since we're
Then
talking
that should
about
work. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have that plan finished by then, and the timing will work for this.
Okay. We can vote on the contract extension now if folks want to, or we can hold it till June.
Can we just have a little more discussion?
We can have a little more discussion. I imagine that Josh wants me to formally call the meeting to order.
Oh, yeah,
Start
yeah.
the slides. So why don't we do that, and then we'll take the budget public hearing. So Matt, we'll come back to your question when we get to that in the agenda. We have, I know, some speakers waiting for the public hearing as well. Madam Secretary, please follow.
Chair Kaplan. Vice Chair Weiss.
Present, operating remotely from Lakewood, Colorado.
Linda Bailey.
Present.
Randy Collins. Present. Kendall Taylor. Matt Harris.
Here.
Hillary Orr. Ajay Thomas.
Present.
Marat Omey. Jesse O'Connell.
Present.
Okay, Chair Kaplan, you have a quorum. The following members are currently absent: Kendall Taylor, Marat Omey.
Kendall has an excused absence. We are expecting Marat to join us later. Thank you. All right, let's take up the public hearing then. So tonight we have a public hearing on the budget for Dash. Last month we had a hearing on the transit development program for the fiscal year. We split them apart because the budget, we were waiting for final adoption from council because they were going to consider some supplemental requests that we were making. And we actually have very good news because one of them was funded by the council. And Josh, do you have a slide that addresses the budget changes? I'm going to turn this over to you to just fill in the context of what we have, but I just wanted to make sure we had that up.
Yes, I can flip around and find.
Okay, well, the major changes there. Yeah. So it was line 33, which is the King Street to Potomac Yard Metro change, and the Sunday service currently operates hourly. We're going to have 30-minute service. That was our top supplemental request, given that we wanted to line up with the opening of the metro station. That was a total addition of 120,000 to our budget. Were there any other adjustments or things you want to note related to the budget before we allow speakers?
No, and certainly when it comes to the item for you to consider, as it's noted here, you may either, following the hearing today, you may close the hearing and then choose to take action, or you may defer action until June. I will highlight the basic changes to the budget, but essentially they're primarily operational changes for this line 33 expansion. Aside from that, there are still 2 scenarios as presented at the last meeting, with my recommended scenario being highlighted in the packet for you.
To adjust for the minor reduction that city staff spoke and that remained in our budget.
That's right. That's right. So other than that, the budget being considered by the board is effectively my budget as proposed originally, now also with a line 33 expansion, or alternatively a OMB submitted budget that has a number of reductions in some non-personnel areas.
Okay. So I have 2 speakers who have indicated they are in the room and wish to speak. I know there's one individual who pre-registered on Zoom, so we're going to take our speakers who are in the room first. This is also our public comment period for for this meeting. And so I'm going to read kind of a modified version of our public comment statement just to set the ground rules for the public hearing. We are about to convene into a budget public hearing. All board meetings include a public comment period at the beginning of each meeting or public hearing, as we believe it is crucial to hear from our riders and community members. The board is here to listen. However, please keep in mind that public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns or questions tonight. We take the concerns and questions seriously and need sufficient time to process and research any issues if need be. Board members will respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have a proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. In the case of a public hearing, all testimony is part of the public hearing record to be considered by the board in making final decision, in this case on the budget. Please note personnel matters are not part of the public comment period. However, please note we take any personnel questions seriously or ask to contact the Dash administration with any such concerns. We ask all speakers and members of the audience to maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. Further, we ask that speakers address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. The board will be taking pre-registered speakers first, then we'll invite others to speak who may not have pre-registered. For future meetings, you may pre-register on the website dashbus.com on the board of directors page, or if you're in person on the clipboard that is set out at the entrance of the meeting. I will now call the first speaker. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes for your comments. If you're speaking on behalf of a neighborhood civic association or a unit owners association, please identify yourself accordingly and you will be recognized for up to 5 minutes. And we have a timer that is there in the slide that will be there. It will turn yellow when you have 1 minute remaining. It will turn red when you need to wrap up your comments. So first speaker, Jim Murphy, and we have a podium. You're welcome to use that, Jim.
Chairman, again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board. I wish to address the process for evaluating the effectiveness of service changes once they've been implemented. And specifically, you're referring to the Dash Route 34 service change. Our group requested clarification of the process. And we want to know how much participation the affected constituencies they have in the process as you're reevaluating. I'm mostly quoting and slightly paraphrasing a question from, I believe, Ms. Thomas and could have been Ms. Bailey at the board meeting on May 4th, 2022. Subject was a proposed realignment. The question and answer started about 1 hour and 25 minutes. And it was a 2-part statement question, very interesting. The questioner in the first part confirmed that she'd been told earlier that the assets to be applied to the realignment were not being drawn from other lines in the system. And especially her concern was buses coming from use in the West End. Then to paraphrase, she asked, so if a line were rerouting from its existing location to a new location, is there a process for evaluating if it's working and then making changes and adapting if it's not successful? That was the question. And Mr. Barnard's answer was, again, to paraphrase, sure, thank you for the question. You know, it's not a built-in process, but obviously with any change we make, like the new network, it's a huge change. We're closely monitoring ridership. As a main impact, but also other factors like on-time performance, impact on the community, accessibility to service. And he continued with at least 10 other implications, from his memory. Not answered, not surprising, and I don't mean that in any way other than the fact it wasn't answered. Was the, is there, how they have that? Adapting if it's not successful. What are we going to do if it's not successful? If we're studying it, what are we going to do? Or how are we going to study it? So
30 seconds remaining.
That there's not a process we're aware of. Neighborhood recommends that Dash commit to evaluating the change. We recommend that you commit to evaluating it and change for the next FY. We believe that there's going to be more than enough data on the change by the 31 December on ridership and the number of people carrying bags from Trader Joe's and Park Street.
Your time is up. Please finish your comments.
We think it'd be easy to collect the numbers, get a confident study put together, and we're more than willing to help. And thank you for listening.
Next speaker, Karen, thanks.
Good evening. My name is Kara Fass and I'm representing Portner's Landing. This-
Are you requesting 5 minutes?
I can probably make it. Thank you. This weekend, we watched the bus testing, making the turn from Pendleton onto Pitt Street. We have one exit from our community. It's one-way street in our private streets. And that one exit is onto Pitt Street, about 20 feet from where the buses are making the turn. The buses had to wave all of the cars through to be able to make the turn, even without a car parked in the parking spot on North Pitt Street. And they are turning directly into where we are exiting the community. And with cars backed up, you've got a problem. So we were out there watching this happen on the weekend during the slowest traffic that happens. We think there's going to be a problem there. We've spoke before you all before, we've emailed, and we would really like this to be reevaluated before anything moves forward. I think during the May 4th, 2022 meeting, during the June 8th, 2022 meeting, there were some very thoughtful questions that were brought up by board members, and they made excellent points. And I think to go back and relook at those questions about safety, the turns, this is huge. And I don't understand myself why it was unanimously voted through, considering the items that were brought up, but it needs to be relooked at again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Master.
And David, if I may, I voted against it. It
Oh,
wasn't
I'm sorry.
unanimous.
I'm sorry, thank you.
And 8-1. We have a speaker on Zoom who pre-registered, Mr. Durham. If he's here, we can unmute. I see Jim popping up now on the screen. You're unmuted, Jim. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Kaplan, board, Dash leadership. I'm not speaking on the budget. I just wanted to take a few minutes to thank the board and Dash leadership team for your contributions to public health in Alexandria. You may be wondering, what have you done for public health? And I will follow this up with a note to the board probably tomorrow with a progress report from the 2025 Community Health Improvement Plan. This is a plan that the community put together. I forgot to mention, I'm speaking on behalf of the Partnership for Healthier Alexandria Steering Committee. We worked with the health department to have a community process to develop a health improvement plan, 5-year plan. And it identified 3 major areas to focus on that impact public health. One is mental health, another one is housing, and the third is poverty. And as part of the poverty strategic objectives and specific tactics, there were 2 items that you have directly impacted. One was, and again, this was put together a few years ago, one was to have free or reduced fares for low-income residents. That got preempted, if you will, by free fare for all or zero fare for all. So that's a huge, huge impact on public health in Alexandria. And so going forward, I know that Councilman Chapman's asked, city manager said the sustainability of Dash funding and the free fare for zero fare program will be discussed at the fall council retreat. And I know I'm familiar with the financial challenges ahead. But I just want you to know that it is maintaining free fare or reduced fares for low-income residents is a public health initiative. And I want to thank you for the progress that's so far. The second initiative was to implement the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan. I was fortunate to be a member of the stakeholder group when that was developed, and I'm a firm believer that it's an equity and poverty issue to get all day, 7-day a week, high frequency service in the high density areas. And there's still elements left to be funded, but there's been progress. And again, I want to thank you for that, for including to continue to recommend that to council that they consider those and give them an opportunity to make those impacts. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for your efforts and your leadership of Dash that has resulted in really good, strong contributions to public health as well as the equity initiatives in the city. And that's all I have. Just say thank you very much.
Jim, we greatly appreciate that. Thank you. And also thank you for your service as the vice chair of the Riders Advisory Committee. Appreciate having your perspective there.
Thank you.
All right, so now I'm going to ask if there are any other speakers in the room who wish to be heard. I see all staff, so I'm guessing not. Anyone on Zoom who would like to be heard should indicate by raising their hand, and we will recognize. We're going to pause briefly to see if anybody else seeks recognition.
I don't see any hands going up.
All right. So if that's the case, then we can have a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Mass or second. Lynn, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, public hearing is closed. Thank you. All right, that was actually short. The approval of the meeting minutes from April 5th, 2023 were included in our meeting packet. Are there any revisions to?
Excuse me, David. I have one administrative correction.
Okay.
In the minutes, I had listed the date as March 8th or March 9th, 2022. It should have been March 8th, 2023. And once it's approved, I'll make that change.
Thank you. Yes. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes as corrected?
I moved to adopt the minutes as corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jason, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right.
Abstain.
Welcome.
Oh,
Brandy
I wasn't
abstains. Brandy was absent. We have a chair for it.
Sorry.
We have dinner in there. As well. All right, so we just got through the minutes and we did the public hearing. So moving on to the chair's report, we've already said our thanks to John. We've talked about the TransDev contract renewal.
We want to move,
Yeah, that's good. And so Murat, just to catch you up, the TransDev contract was a one-year extension of the existing contract at a fairly reasonable 3% increase. We have talked in our earlier discussion tonight about putting together a committee that's going to look at whether we do an RFP going forward. As after we have now a little more experience with TransDev, having absorbed first and the experience we're having and also some performance metrics. So we can vote on that tonight since there don't appear to be any. I don't know if you had any questions about the contract. We can vote on that tonight if we'd like to. It is effective at the start of the fiscal year, so we have the ability to do it in June, but we're ready so we can take it up. Matt, you had another question?
I did, but I just, I don't see the 3% where it says 3%, but I mean.
It's just based, I'm sorry, I didn't include the full contract. So the amount that you see here in this is representative of a 3% increase from the current contract.
Okay, and was the prior price in effect the entire term of the contract, or did it go?
Yes,
escalate?
so it throughout the term of the contract, it escalated, and I'm not sure, I think it was around 3% each year for the life of the contract. I believe it was a 4-year contract, so
And
it's
just
pretty normal.
when they negotiate the contract with ATU, is that part of the hourly rate then at 175 an hour?
Yes.
Okay.
And that, as you mentioned, that contract was set up back in 2019 prior to negotiations beginning when we identified that we wanted First Transit doing those
Okay.
services. So they held that same rate.
Okay, and then I'm just gonna comment, I'm glad First Transit folks are still involved in the negotiations.
Thanks. Okay. Does anyone make a motion to approve the one-year extension?
Come on, Hillary.
Summer.
All right. Any further discussion? Not all in favor of the extension, say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Hillary will probably touch on this in her report. I'm looking forward so much to the Potomac Yard Metro opening, and that's a wonderful thing. And to have the yellow line back, and I got a free reusable bag on Monday morning as I went through Braddock Road that was yellow. And so it's nice, nice little gift to start the week off. I will turn it over to you, Hillary.
Thank you. I was not going to mention that since we talked about it at the last meeting a little bit, and I think Martin might have a Potomac Yard Metro update in his report, so I don't want to steal his thunder. I wanted to focus tonight on once again Duke Street in motion. So last time we met, we were just about to kick off the third round of public engagement, where we got feedback from the community on two different busway concepts and then two different kind of curb feature concepts. And we had a number of outreach events, including pop-ups, ride-alongs. We had our chat AI feature, and we had a pretty well attended public open house. And you know, we got a lot of feedback from the community, feedback form online. We only got about 400 responses on that, I believe, so less than before, than other rounds. But I think a lot of what the information that we got in the second round of feedback when we were trying to understand, you know, how people wanted to balance trade-offs, was applicable to helping the advisory group kind of make a decision about what they want the ultimate preferred alternative to be. So they will be making a recommendation on, for this preferred alternative on May 25th. And then that will go to council on June 27th. And so at the next DASH meeting, we want you all to be prepared to say whether you are endorsing their recommendation to council or whether you're saying that, you know, you have changes to whatever they endorse. We don't know what they're going to endorse yet. But I provided in the packet links to some fact sheets, a recorded webinar, and different the role plots that are really kind of detailed for the whole corridor. If you want to dive in on more specifics, you can click on those. It'd be great if you could kind of prep and learn a little bit more about the project before you make that recommendation. And then, of course, if there's any feedback that you want me to provide to the advisory group, we could do written information. We can get them any input from the board prior to their their May 25th meeting. If there's things that you want them to consider, we're still taking written comments from boards and commissions.
I had a chance to attend your April 20th open house. And I thought it was very well run, and I was mostly just sort of hovering around other conversations because so many people live along the border. I mostly see it on a bus or crossing at a single intersection to catch a bus, but people who live there had such detailed questions about the impacts of, you know, the sidewalk and the different paths that are there. And it was so interesting just to learn about kind of their experience along there. But it seemed to be overall very positive. But very constructive, I guess I would say, session, so, at least what I saw of it, so.
You didn't stay for the public comment period?
Well, I did hear the public, I didn't hear all the public, I heard most of the public comment, but at least I'm talking about the one-on-one conversation with the consultants. I thought people were asking really good
Yes.
questions as opposed to just saying, no, I don't want anything. People were acknowledging, well, most people were acknowledging that, you know, if things have to change, they wanted to understand this a little better. And I felt like your graphics really were so helpful to visualize, you know, every different part of the corridors.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I think we had a lot of staff there, we had our consultant team, and we had a lot of really, really good conversations with the community. And the conversations that I heard and that I had, I felt like people walked away with a better understanding of the project and the goals. And you know, I think one of the things that we have been hearing throughout the project is, you know, in our feedback forms and in the feedback that we're requesting, like that we're not giving people the opportunity to just say, I don't want this project. And that's not what we're asking. We're not asking if you want the project, right? Like, this has been a project that that has been on our books since 2008, and multiple councils have said, keep going down this path. These are things that we want to do, and these are priorities for our city and how we want to think about transportation in our streets. So we have not been asking people if they want it. We're asking, we're doing it. What do you want it to look like? And how can you help us kind of get the design features right? So we'll see how this all pans out.
And I think for ours, we think about our letter in June. I mean, we should look at what is the safest, most efficient way for transit, which generally is the, you know, would say center running is the thing that's going to get us the biggest bang for the buck. And that's where I think we can be most helpful, just to say, you know, in terms of getting people to the bus, and then also the bus ensuring that we see the most improvement over what's there today as we look to do our letter. But I think, you know, others have comments of things we want to consider, because we're going to bring a draft to the next meeting to ensure it gets to council in time. So if there's anything you want to consider in that, you know, please feel free. We can have a little brief discussion on that now.
Well, I mean, it's a good use of money. There was a Alexandria Times editorial board comment, which
It was an article. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. It was an article.
it was an actual article, but there was also, you know, on the left side when they have their own silly use of taxpayer funds. It's our money.
Mhm.
It's our money. It's for improving this corridor, which if you think it's good now, I mean, that is, we've got problems. It's absolutely the worst in the city.
And it's actually all grant money, which, right, it's all public money, right? But it's not coming out of directly from our
We
taxpayer
don't use
dollars.
it, someone else will.
That's right,
Yeah.
likely to widen roads and Fairfax County and bring more traffic through our
Right.
community. So, it's a really, really great and important project that I think no matter what we do, it's gonna make Duke Street a much better place for people, no matter how they're getting around.
I just want to comment, Hillary was on a panel recently. Right, by community group at the Masonic Temple. She did a great job answering the questions and just presenting the project to the public and making it clear to understand. So I just wanted to give kudos to you, Hillary,
Thank you.
for your participation on the panel.
Thanks. Agenda Alexandria is fun. Actually, I do think that stuff is it's really fun to be able to kind of have all the different opinions and be able to kind of, it's a nice place where you can kind of say your piece and you heard, so. Yeah, thank you.
What's that group?
Agenda Alexandria,
I'm not familiar.
yeah, they're kind of small.
Okay.
They
exist.
take a topic like once a month and very different topics, controversial topics. They usually try and have somebody from the city. And kind of then a for and against, and they moderate and ask questions.
Oh, cool. That's great.
What I was gonna ask you, when I was reading the article, I kind of noticed a few names. You know, for opposition, but I don't think there's some. You know, technical analyses or study or anything behind their claims that it's not gonna do this, it's like, right, it's just like. People being
Opinions.
concerned and opinions, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Even though there was a title mentioned for increasing credibility as the previous. Dash CEO and all, I don't know the person, but and with all respect, I don't consider you to be a traffic engineering expert just because. So, I just wanted to know that there is no background behind it, that there were like studies that were done.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it. But yeah, the roll plot links in here are really good if you have time to kind of dive in to see some of the changes.
And I'm sorry, I mean, last month we asked that with the yellow line back down, I guess we know, is the 11Y running in its current? form?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Yes.
Okay, oh, that's great.
Yes.
Okay, they were able to start that.
They kept that going. I did have one other thing that's not in the packet, because I didn't think about it until earlier today, but I think it's good news that we, the staff and with Martin's help had applied for a commuter assistance program grant through DRPT. And we were awarded that grant. I don't know if it's officially, like, we don't have a grant agreement yet, but the city will be getting $200,000 and that's all for Dash marketing. So that'll really help give us a little bit more money to do stuff, but also I think what we're trying to do with grants in the city is offset the city dollars that we're putting to some of this stuff. So if this funding can pay for some of the city dollars that we're putting toward Dash marketing, then we can use that, the city funds elsewhere.
Oh, great.
I think that was all I have tonight. Any questions about anything else?
I had asked Marat and Steve to hold off on the strategic planning committee update just because of what we do have an exec session tonight, but I think may be quite lengthy. So although we're moving through the agenda faster than I had thought, I appreciate both your willingness to hold that until June. Are there others who have announcements from boards, commissions, groups that you're part of? Benefit group. We'll move on to the general manager's report. And I know Josh also had agreed to move some of the less urgent action items, less urgent informational items to June, because I wanted to make sure they got the attention that they needed. So I appreciate I see that you clarified what we're covering tonight and what we are going to hold. I appreciate your willingness to move it around and get into a broader discussion on them. We all have written updates though on all of them. So there's one action item, and Matt, and before Josh starts, the letter to Federal Highway Administration, that is an action item, because that's going to a federal agency, same ethics rules apply as the FPA letter we did. So Matt is actually going to run that portion of the meeting. So I will recuse and step away, and Marat is also recusing and stepping away. And Steve, are you going to recuse from that vote as well?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So we'll have, we still have
Do we have enough people?
Yeah, well, you have Jesse.
Well, once you have the quorum.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so the online people count for. Okay. All right, so Josh, I'll let you launch your report.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I will, considering we have a few minutes, I won't talk in detail about these items we've deferred, but I will simply say that we're very excited about this partnership, and I hope you had an opportunity to read on page 11 of your packet, the detailed description of what the ECPAT partnership is. This is an extension of our ongoing commitment to combat human trafficking, and we've joined transit leaders across the country. Actually, the dashboard, probably 4 years ago, authorized a resolution also endorsing my take on the joining the pledge against human trafficking. So that is an actual clickable link there that tells you some details about that if you were to be viewing the packet online. But we'll talk some more about it in June as the board is interested. But the great thing about this is grant funded, and we were actually selected as one of the very few transit agencies that this group has partnered with, and they'll essentially be doing all the work, which is really great. And I will just say at a very high level that as someone who has not experienced human trafficking and does not know anybody who's experienced human trafficking and doesn't understand the signs in it, and many of my staff are in the same position, it's very hard for us to combat it when we don't understand what we're up against. And so this group's project will have an extensive amount of outreach. It will be looking within Alexandria. It will be looking at our services. It will be providing some training tools, a website, and helping us develop a training program that will help ensure that our bus operators and other staff are able to identify the signs of human trafficking. The scary part of it is we know it's happening. It's happening right in front of us. Many of us just don't understand how to spot it. And many of the victims don't know or don't have resources to get out of it. And so we're really excited about this project. And again, I'll talk some more about that in June. But certainly, please take a moment when you have a chance to read that information in the packet. And there are some additional resources online. The earmark as well is deferred, but this is also just an exciting thing that we're working on with the city. And the city is really taking the lead on this. And I'm not entirely sure where it originates from. I think it's primarily at the city manager's office. And but we are actually listed now on some earmarks with both Senators Kane and Warner, who have picked our project to be one of their lead projects. And if it is funded, if it makes its way through the earmark process, we would potentially be looking at installing the first on route overhead, meaning the bus pulls underneath of a apparatus while it's en route, stops to unload passengers. And while it's doing that, an arm comes down and starts charging the bus automatically. And that doesn't exist anywhere in Virginia. So we have our fingers crossed if that comes through, that we in Alexandria would again be leading the way to put that in. It looks like it would probably only be one charger at this point, and the location is to be determined, but maybe we could get two depending on how things look by the time the light is here. So cross your fingers and we're hopeful that comes through. I want to talk for a moment just to recap. Periodically I try to just talk a little bit about our work structure, and I've got a number of members of my team here, and I want to take an opportunity to just again reintroduce them and talk a little bit about them. But Dash has grown substantially in the past 6 years that I've been here. I wouldn't know the exact percentage, but I know that our staff levels are high enough that we're well over 100 plus people that have grown in the organization in the 6 years that I've been here. And that's a huge amount of work and a huge amount of things that are going on. Plus, we're leading the country in many ways in electrification. We're going out there after federal money. We're trying to find ways to be innovative. We're running fare free, and we're moving more people than we've ever moved before. So seeing this and seeing an opportunity as we continue to work through turnover within our own staff, which is a normal part of business, and some ways that we could tweak our internal structure to be equipped for the future, and also to deal with the grants and the other things. I've made some organizational changes, and the biggest part of that is that you will see that this chart goes from a much more flat organizational chart that I put this little animation in to kind of give you a sense of how it cleans up a little bit. And the biggest change is that you all know Raymond Mui, who is in the audience. Raymond has served for my duration here as my only assistant general manager, and his primary responsibilities were involving the operations and maintenance departments. But as we've grown and as we've been doing more, Ray has taken on all of our capital projects, all of our grants. And frankly, he had too much on his plate. So Ray has now been promoted as our Chief Infrastructure and Development Officer. It's a mouthful. His focus now involves all parts of the organization that deal with planning, financial, the development of our capital programs, our facility expansion, bus purchases, electrification infrastructure, all those kinds of things. So he's the electric bus guy. And very excited to announce an internal promotion into our COO position, which is Stephanie Salzone, who is sitting in the audience. Many of you may know Stephanie joined a couple of years ago in our safety. She actually started our safety department, which is actually now a full-fledged department and has had substantial impacts on the organization. And Stephanie has proven herself as an exemplary employee and someone who really has a great commitment to Dash and a passion for what we do. Her background actually came from Hampton Roads Transit. And before that, you were in Lynchburg for a little while. And before that, you were from my alma mater in Blacksburg Transit. So Stephanie has taken on our sort of operational side of the organization that involves maintenance, operations, and training departments, which is the largest piece of our organization by far. So that delineation of responsibilities will help us to better respond to the workforce and to the projects that we have going on. Stephanie, when I offered her after we did a full recruitment process on this, we did a search and we were proud that an internal candidate stood above all the rest. But she looked me in the eyes when I talked to her about this position and said, wait a minute, there's no directors in these positions that I'm about to be taking over. And she's right. John Lenoka, who's now left, has announced his retirement. Kevin Hernandez, who many of you all may know, actually got a great opportunity in Montgomery County, Prince George's County. Thank you. We're very proud of him as a young professional. And he is Chief of Transit Operations for the bus in Montgomery County, PG County. So we were sad to see him go, but we understood the opportunity that we had on his plate. So we don't have a director of operations. And believe it or not, Stephanie had also been running two departments for the better part of a year because we did not have a director of training, which she reminded me of as well. So good for Stephanie having to say, wait a minute. So the good news is that because of our intensive recruitment process, we had some really excellent candidates that came in interested in this position. And we talked with them about some of these other openings, and they're going to be joining us in the next couple of weeks. So we were able to appease Stephanie and take care of a little bit of her heartburn and knowing that she's got some great new leaders coming in. But there's a lot of kind of moving and shaking going on within the organization. But the thing I'm most proud of is that we continue to see growth of our workforce and the people within our workforce and the promotional opportunities they have. Plus, I'm always very proud when we see people who have learned a lot at Dash and go on to take on even bigger and greater things. I think that's a good thing, that we should be seen as a place where we've developed great people. So although we've lost some people, we've gained some really great ones, and I look forward to what that's going to bring. So again, just a high level understanding of kind of what's going on there. And I would remind you all that structurally, the Director of Safety and Security, who will be starting the next week or two, I will introduce to the board, does have a advisory authority to the board by structure, and this is under federal guidelines. That department reports directly to me, and it has a direct line to you all. It's really a stop check to make sure that if the organization were headed the wrong direction from a safety perspective, that you all have a direct line beyond me. Even if it was me or another CEO who was in this position, you have that person has the authority to come to you and alert you of risk. And so that's a pre-designed function of this organizational structure to ensure that that direct line is there, because that's above all else the most important thing to make sure that we don't fall behind on. Okay.
Josh, I do want to just congratulate staff on their promotion.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to have a more in-depth discussion on it tonight, and we kind of, I appreciate the summary that you gave us, but
yes,
these folks have.
And I don't want to, of course, we have Joseph in the back. You all know Joseph has been doing an excellent job at Dash. Martin, who you hear from a lot, and Edward who you all know. Lou, who is not a staff member, but I will recognize Lou and thank him for joining the meeting. Lou actually is are you the regional manager? Lou is our bus guy. He's works with us on our bus bills and sales. Yeah, so our electric buses and all those kinds of things, those are from Lou, and so he's in town and he wanted to stay connected with what's going on at the board, so.
We just, I'm sorry.
Flyer?
Here's what new
Flyer?
flyer. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome.
I didn't want to leave just one random face sitting there. You all are sitting there wondering, was that a step? But Lou works very well with us and we really appreciate his support and being tuned into what's going on at Dash, so we're glad he's here. Before I turn it over to you, Mr. Acting Chair, I will just mention the Red Flag Law Awareness Campaign. I've asked them to come and speak at the next meeting to talk a little bit about this. I believe it's a really great project and important public awareness campaign that I have given the word that we're interested in posting on our bus. It's really to alert people of the red flag laws that are available to them and to help address the epidemic of gun violence that's going on in this country. So more to come on that, but there's information, of course, in your packet as well. So with that, I will leave the slide up that talks a little bit about this, and I can start that intro now, or you want to let them the recruits review and we can discuss it.
Unfortunately, this isn't official yet, but I'm going to be taking a job with joint office, so I think I actually have to recuse myself also.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Better safe than sorry.
Take it.
Yeah.
All this power is go through my fingers as we speak. All right, let's get this done fast before everybody else leaves. In your packet on page 15 is a letter. I've got an exact replica of that letter with my signature on here, since David and several others can't participate since we're asking for federal funds. This seems like a great program to sign on to. I hope everybody's had the opportunity to read through this letter, but basically the city is asking for federal funds and we're supporting this to build up the infrastructure for its electric charging stations, not just for Dash, but it also looks like for residents as well and different agencies to use. So I don't know how it actually will work in the end, like where they'll be placed or how many, but hopefully we'll get this grant and work out the details later. So with that, is there a motion to accept the letter that I'm sending to the Department of Transportation FHA Administrator?
There's also a fact sheet on.
There's a fact sheet on the
there.
opposite side.
Yeah, and if you all have any questions about the grant, I've been working with our climate action office on this. So it's actually not, the one piece that really impacts Dash is the pilot for a vehicle to building charging. And so doing that as a pilot, but the infrastructure that we're looking for it's actually for publicly accessible charging stations.
Right.
And we're looking at different types of charging stations in different locations so that we can start to see how they're used and plan for the future.
So I do have some questions. Do end users pay or is it free for the electricity itself?
They can pay. We still have to work out what our policy is gonna be. We don't have any publicly accessible
And
stations that would be charging for.
the city of Alexandria, as we know, gets charged at a higher rate the more electricity we use. Will this affect that rate? You don't know. Okay. Because, I mean, that's something I wish the city would actually sort of negotiate Dominion to revise so that the more we use, the less they charge us per rate hour, kilowatt hour, just because it's antithetical to our desire to be electric
Right.
going forward. Okay, I'm sure I have a billion other questions, but does anybody else remaining have any questions?
I would just add that I think it's exciting, the idea that we're starting to think about technology where in an emergency, a Dash bus could be taken to a facility and plugged in. And the energy that's on that Dash bus could actually be used for emergency purposes. And that's something we've been thinking about also the Dash facilities.
And I mean, that, I don't want to waste too much time because I know we have a long meeting, but that's something that we should get some extra credit for with the city down the line. Just having that emergency resource available to use generally the rest of the city. So Okay, is there an emotion allowing me to sign this letter and moving it out? Moved by Brandy, is there a second? A second by Jayshu. All those in favor, or first of all, any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. All those opposed. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you so much.
And we'll
And I will
automatically
send,
note the recusals on the other individuals.
I will send, give the letter to Beth. You're gonna quit your job, so that's.
Well, Steve retiring in summer, right? Steve, you're still on target to, once Steve retires, he can run this part of it.
They always say, you know.
Where are you going to work? I missed,
Sorry, it's not that public yet. I guess it's
Oh,
public
I
now,
need
but
to-
I took a job with Department of Energy,
oh,
so I'll be starting in June, so I won't start till June.
I work.
I'll be working on. So
Oh.
definitely need to recuse myself.
Mr. Chairperson?
You Left the room. We can attest to the fact you weren't even here. but-
I don't even know it's.
Congratulations.
That's right. Thanks, yeah.
Steve had a comment?
Yes, I may be delaying that decision a bit further after consultation with our chairperson.
Matt is delighting in this because he wants to sign more letters. So.
It still has not yet been decided, but we're in negotiation.
That's fair, Steve. Thank you. All right, financial report. Josh, did you have anything further on?
Sure, so I'll just highlight again what's in your packet, and as mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. You have now heard both the TDP public hearings and the budget public hearings. You are going to be asked in a few moments to take up, considering adopting the TDP. You may choose to take action on the budget as proposed this evening, or you may defer that until June, just so long as both are done by June. As mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, really the only big change here is the addition of the line 33 service expansion, which brings that service up to 30 minutes instead of every 60 minutes. I'll just recap very briefly, exact same slides from last month, that there are two scenarios. They are also included in your packet. One recognizes what we believe to be the OMB proposed budget as we determined it based off of their budget documents. Once again, the dash allocation is a lump sum amount that is then determined by this board as to exactly how it's spent. The adjustments in scenario two really just recognize much of the discussion that the board had early on in the process, recognizing the importance of staff development, training, and employee recognition programs. Those are the key differences. I will note that the fuel as budgeted for the coming year is respectively in scenario one at $4.55 a gallon, whereas in scenario two, it's at $4.33 a gallon. We are down now in the $2 and some odd gallons, $2.37. So again, we saw in this year kind of this huge spike, which was so significant that it pulled our entire average up and really wrecked our budget. And we've recognized that's happened now 2 years in a row. We don't want that to happen again. So I spent a lot of time, Edward has spent a lot of time really crunching these numbers. I appreciate and I'm very confident in what he has been looking at, that this maintains a very conservative approach, even in scenario two, to ensure that we have sufficient cushion built in if we see yet another spike in fuel costs in the coming year. Dash does not really have a contingency in our budget. We've never had one. The sort of motto has been the contingency is whatever your savings are in different line items and whether that balances out in the end. So this in some ways could also be considered a contingency if the fuel prices don't end up, skyrocketing, doing that again.
So if you come in under budget, is that money going back to the city then, since
Yes.
typically we've been coming in?
Yeah,
under budget and they've been-
anytime, and that's always been the past, good question. Anytime that Dash runs a surplus at the end of the year, that surplus is redirected back to the general reserves of the city.
Gosh, does diesel price fluctuate seasonally like regular gasoline?
Yeah, and interestingly, this would be the time that we would start seeing it fluctuate. Summer, travel season, it probably will pop back up quite a bit. I wouldn't imagine we'll see $2 and some change all summer long. That's probably not realistic. But yeah, this would normally be a time of year where we would see, instead of seeing it go down, we'd see it going up. It's yet to be seen what the summer travel season does. I think a big part of this is just the pressures of inflation and people are dialing back because it's just become a point where people are just very stretched and you all have listened to probably and read your economic news, and I won't rehash that, but I think that there's a factor there that's also affecting the fuel prices that we're paying.
So what is the preference of the board? Do you want to vote on the budget tonight? I'm seeing some nods.
I feel like we've talked about it a couple times now.
Yeah.
I think it'd be good. Yeah.
So is there? So I guess we have to differentiate which scenario on the budget we're going to do, the general manager or the OMB budget. So we'll take a motion, but you'll need to specify which scenario you want to. So budget scenario 1 or 2 in the motion.
I move that we approve FY24 revised budget scenario 2 as proposed by the general manager, making adjustments for projected fuel prices and reinstating professional development and travel for admin staff.
Very good. A motion, Linda, second, Jaysha. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right, and that wraps up. There is a lot of financial information there for your review. Certainly feel free to ask us any questions as you have them. But as mentioned at the retreat, this information is provided to you, and of course, we're towards the end of the year, so now you've got a full picture of kind of how things played out for you.
Any questions for Edward? All right, now we'll go on to Martin's reports, and we do have one action item. We take up the TDP. Right.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I've got a couple items this evening. First, item 6A, which is our monthly ridership update. Continuing the good news trend, we had almost 411,000 boardings in the month of March, which is the highest we've ever seen for the month of March for Dash. I would also note, I can't remember if I mentioned this last, I think I mentioned it last month, so I apologize if I'm saying it again. That's the second highest of any month in Dash history. The only other month that was better was, I think, August of 2012, which is when we started doing King Street Trolley and everyone was wanting to ride the new trolley. So this is the second highest of any month. And there's actually a graph in your packet I should have included in the presentation, but there's a graph showing all 40 years in lines. You can see the current year is the highest. So continue to see great news on that.
Have we tweeted that or publicized?
We did, yeah. Yeah, we'll continue to tout those things.
Let's hope that line keeps growing the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yep. So the second item is, as Chair Kaplan mentioned, is a action item. This is our consideration of the board's for adoption of the FY24 TDP, the Transit Development Plan. We presented the draft TDP back in March. We were able to conduct our public outreach period for the last month and a half, and then we've come back and reviewed the comments and revised some parts of the plan, mostly small kind of adjustments here and there. The big change, as we mentioned, is line 33 is now funded for Sunday improvements. So we're excited about that. There's a memo in your packet that outlines all the outreach that we did, all the different events, and some of the feedback that we heard. Also, all the comments that we received are available at the in the appendices of the plan itself, which is in the packet. So don't really have anything further to add, but I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
I have a couple. So one is, and I thank you guys, did great outreach as always. I was glad actually we had participation. I wasn't sure how much participation we get this year. I was glad we got comments. One of them that I think is something, and you had noticed something we should pay attention to is specifically the direct service to the Del Pepper Center versus where the Mark Center, and not having, I've been to the Mark Center Transit Center, but not since the Del Pepper Center. So I'm not exactly sure what the distance is or the feasibility of our buses serving there, but, and I think, there's a shuttle that maybe runs during certain hours to, between that Mark Center transit stop and the.
Actually, not sure about that part.
Oh, okay, I thought maybe I'd heard that was before the building had opened, from someone, but, is there anything that, you think in the future that we could do adjustment wise that would ensure that folks can be dropped off closer to that facility? Just, and I ask that not really knowing what the conditions are.
Yeah, so the Del Pepper, I think most folks are familiar with Del Pepper Resource Center that just opened up this past month. It's kind of tucked behind the Mark Center, which the Mark Center itself is extremely well served by transit, but the Resource Center is a little bit of a walk. I'd say it's probably about maybe a fifth of a mile, a little under a quarter of a mile, maybe closer than that. That might be a little longer. But it is kind of tucked back behind there, far enough that it's a little bit of a long walk from the transit center. So we are cognizant of that. So we did kind of take a look. One of the comments did suggest that we extend line 102 back to serve the center. So we did take a look at that. We are kind of continuing to evaluate. We can't do it in cost neutral. There will be additional costs. That's something that we'll look at probably for next year's GDP, because we do recognize the importance of getting folks to the DCHS and health department headquarters. A lot of folks do take transit to that. So we want to provide a good connection. So of course we couldn't do it cost neutral. So we're going to try and find ways to incorporate that in next year's plan.
Okay, but it is feasible to have a stop that is closer and the road is.
We haven't done the full bus testing. I don't want to speak
Okay.
from the safety department, but
The circle's pretty tight.
it is very
Yeah.
tight. Yes, it's very tight. So
Okay, it's interesting, and I, if we can continue, because I think as more people are going to that sign, we may get that question more commonly and want to know that, we're investigating. And the other question, are folks who had advocated on the line 34 changes have left, but I'm gonna ask the question they want in terms of how and when it is appropriate to start to do an evaluation of that route. Because I don't think the scenario they suggested of doing it in December makes sense, given that the terminus is a new metro station and a university campus that is under construction and is not going to be open by then. So I mean, we won't know a lot, but can you outline sort of when, and given in the industry parlance, what you would suggest in terms of when we really look and say we've got enough data to really start to make a decision about the success of that?
sure, yeah, thank you for that question. So I mean, for a typical route, you'd expect 12 to 18 months before you'd see maturity of ridership. People first knowing the route is even there, realizing that they can use it, and then begin using it on a regular basis. So that's 12 months is probably the minimum that we would want to. I mean, we'll also look at it for that, but in terms of like an official benchmarking, 12 months is probably a good one. But as you mentioned, the purpose of the route is to start, bring folks up to Potomac Yard, and as that continues to develop, we'll see additional ridership, we think. But I would say that the TDP process is kind of an evaluation that we have built into our process each year. So as part of that, I think that might make sense to look at it through there.
So just to follow up on that, how will you know what's successful since, there's nothing to compare the before to, since there wasn't a metro stop there?
Yeah, that's going to be difficult to parse out. I mean, we can look at individual stop ridership, which might give you a little bit more insight, as opposed to the overall ridership, which we expect to go up because of the metro station.
And then sort of parallel to that, and you know my opinions, but if it runs concurrently with the other two lines, to me, if I lived around there, I'd take whichever one gets me to the metro, whichever one comes first, you know what I mean? So that's the reason why I liked it all the same, because in the past, in a different city, in Pittsburgh, I would have two different parallel lines, and invariably I'd go to one and the other would just pass, and vice versa, and I'd wind up going back and forth. And I hated that. And that's really why I'm for like more bus lines on one line rather than getting caught in between, like, do I go to this one? Do I go to that one? And back and forth. So, it's a ridership preference. And I think these folks got the argument completely wrong. I agree with the end result, but their argument is just completely antithetical to what we stand for.
Credit for agreeing with them.
That's I'll go to the cookout and we'll be fine.
So I would note I wonder if like one of the change, a couple things on the 34, and I had a question too about Chair's first comment about the Del Pepper Center. I do wonder if like having apps and having all that real-time data on our phone helps people make that decision a little bit easier of like which stop should I go to, because if you can plug in your end route and it's going to tell you which one's coming back first. So I wonder if that addresses some of it.
There's more to that, because if I have the chance to go on one of the ones that's gonna go to Braddock,
Mhm.
I may wait an extra minute or
Right.
so, because it's gonna take me more time to get to the news station. I don't know, it's,
You'll have to try them both and figure it out, right? So, I think the other thing that, if 12 months in is our benchmark, I mean, there's also, line 34 is going up through the new Old Town North is getting a lot more development. The Potomac River site will eventually be coming on, and so while I think it's important to look at, make sure we're looking at the data each year with the TDP, those routes were planned that way because of future development and density as well. And so it's not something where, we just want to shift these routes because there's low ridership for a year, right? Like it seems like they're planned that way for a reason, and just because people don't like the route. I mean, I think if there are safety issues that we identify, we certainly need to address them, but there's a lot going on and a lot of long-term reasons why the buses were put on that route. And it seems like we would hold firm on that for a little while.
Yeah, and that's a really good clarification. When I said 12 to 18 months, that's when we started evaluating, not that we would make a decision at that point.
Yeah.
I think there's a much longer horizon for it if we were to determine it's not.
Right. I have one more question on your first point. Do you all, for the Mark Center, because we've received this question as well, do you all have the ability to count people with mobility impairments that are like needing to make that transfer? And I think about this because I was reading something about people that can get off at places that are not official bus stops, like at night, right? Like there's different types of policies that organizations can adopt for drivers, if it seems like an unsafe condition or something. And I'm wondering, without going all the way into that center, if there is a way to get people a little closer without deviating from the route, because if as a mobile person, it is not a far walk. But so I think the comment is really for people with mobility impairments that need to get to the resource center. And so that's something I've been thinking about, because we're trying to answer the question for folks as well about what improvements we need to do to make sure people can go between the transit center and the resource center.
Yeah, and unfortunately with free fares, we've lost the ability to do some of that. We used to be able to attract, people that had special smartship cards, and seniors with disabilities. We also have special buttons that the operators can press, but now it's kind of just all lumped together. So you probably have to do some sort of survey.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we also look at things like, census data about people with disabilities in certain census tracks. Sometimes that's useful, but maybe not this granular level.
Yeah.
We're trying to get out, and Jaysha had asked previously about us going to the Del Pepper Resource Center for me, which had been also a goal of mine. And so where that stands is Beth has asked again, and this time we were told the general services would handle scheduling, but they've not set up the system yet to actually accommodate scheduling. So what we were told is that, well, you could be there in June, but you basically have to put up a sign. This is Josh. You put up a sign, hold for dash, but if somebody else is sitting there and they don't want to leave, then we would sort of be out of luck. So we decided we're not going to take that risk. Well, I don't know how many people at like 5:30 are wanting to be at the Del Pepper Center if they're not coming to our meeting, but we're going to wait till we can actually book and hold that room, which looks like maybe over the summer, general services will have that in place. And so our goal will be to go in September. And what I would like to do, because I think it will be great to highlight the accessibility of the Mark Center, is for us to be able also to take a picture as a group at the Mark Center transit station. We'll also be able to see that fifth of a mile walk and understand a little more about the conditions that are there.
Can I add one thing, Chair, is if we're gonna do that, we should probably also publicize so people in the area will come to our meeting, because the Human Rights Commission go to different locations, but we make sure people go out there and know that we're in the community.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, that's one of the reasons we move around to different transit. We come here sometimes is also to make it easier for people on transit to come. And so we would, we would certainly.
Sort of like how Martin advertises his outreach.
We have, there's email, and I'm on the distribution list. There's a very wide dash email listserv that goes out every month about where the meeting is and how to come and participate, that our marketing staff does. So yeah, absolutely. But I'm really curious to experience the facility and, be in.
Well, and particularly because West End we don't want them to feel under.
Right. Yeah,
Represented.
that'd be the first time the board has ever met west of Quaker Lane.
Oh, wow.
So that would be, I mean, we've had community meeting, but never a board meeting. We've had community meetings for outreach, for changes.
So I have a question to your point about like people accessing the Mark Center via transit that have mobility challenges. Could y'all just do like a survey with DCHS and Health Department? Like when their customers are coming in, like how did you get here? Like, do you use Dash Bus or something? Like work with them on that possibly? I don't know, like as a team, y'all could talk about that essentially.
Yeah, we're coordinating with both Department of Health Department and DCHS very closely on outreach, so that we have a lot of communications with the public about how they, and their members, people that are using their services, about how they can use Dash to get there. So we've got connections there.
And neighborhood health is there too, like,
That's right.
just like work as a team collectively, maybe to survey people as they're going there and before they leave their appointments or something.
Okay.
That might be a way to use data.
Well, we could vote on the TDP, if folks are ready to do so. We would just need a motion. And I guess we would need to offer an amendment on the line 33, since that's not in the TDP.
It's in the final version.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
in the,
presented
okay.
here back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's
I didn't reread the whole document. And also, before we do that, I want to thank, I don't know if Jim is still on the line or if anybody else from the DAC is here. The Dash Advisory Committee submitted a letter to council advocating for the supplementals that we had selected, and that letter was included in the packet with the feedback that we received. And I want to thank Ross and, the entire DAC for this year, as they've become more established, for being very involved in that advocacy process. Councilman McPike, who had been the sponsor of the line 33 supplement, had written back to Ross, and Josh shared with me the letter basically, indicating that advocacy had been helpful in persuading council to fund that additional service. So I want to recognize them for really stepping up through this process.
We also had in the ad delete process, Councilman Aguirre actually brought up the importance of looking at higher investments, particularly in areas that net a better outcome. And this is a low hanging fruit, probably an easy piece to chop off. But I really appreciated his comments about, I think we were talking quite a bit about the Eisenhower area, which continues to be, I think, a part of the city that really struggles with a very severe lack of transit accessibility and services that are important. So I think I echo your comments and just would say from a manager's perspective, it was really good to see that coming up, because I think there's a recognition, and I personally recognize that a lot, that area and that corridor really needs to be addressed as soon as we can get to it.
Yeah.
Particularly with the development. I mean, think about economic development too. I mean, it's about equity, it's about accessibility, it's about residents who live in that area already today and residents who may live in that area in the future, considering the city's developmental efforts.
And John, that's a great point. We brought that up with the city manager when we met with him in January, because the manager was very focused on why I'm here at my office and I see the buses that come around Market Square and just how much service there is between the trolley, the 30 and 31. And we said, well, you might still hear from residents though, who do have pretty much the same service that they had prior to the implementing of the new Dash network. And that really was Eisenhower that came to mind, because that's the area where we really, what was the AT7 there really remains at the levels it was. And so we do have to be very conscious of that. So, I appreciate you bringing that up. And Councilman Aguirre and others on council who really are champions for us and trying to get fully funded new network. All right, so is there a motion to adopt the TDP?
I move that the board adopts the FY24 TDP.
Moved by Matt. Marat was almost going to make a motion.
Sure, yeah, it's fast.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for item 6C. We have a couple of planning updates that I wanted to share. First is the Potomac Yard Metro. As we all know, the station is opening next Friday, 9 days from today. So really exciting. So I wanted to highlight just the Dash has changes to the 33, 34, and 36 AV that are going to be going into effect that weekend. We will have service there on day one on Friday, 33 and 36, and the line 34 change goes into place on Sunday, so 2 days after that. We have a website, dashbus.com/Potomac Yard, that has a bunch of maps, including these, and a lot of information about the service changes. It's also actually, I think it's gonna be up first thing tomorrow, but we have a Spanish version of that website as well. That will be, well, it's dashbus.com/Potomac Yard -ESP. So we'll be sharing that with the public as well. And then I also just want to highlight that we have done a lot of work with the city with tests on a lot of improvements for the facilities at the new station. There's going to be a bus loop that actually our dash buses will be able to use, that will have shelters and ADA accessible pads for our buses to use. It'll be very convenient. It'll be right next to the station plaza. So we're very grateful for the city and their help and support in that. And then I also wanted to highlight that in addition to these Potomac Yard changes, we're also going to be implementing the line 34 changes for Pitt Street. So we've already kind of talked about that a little bit, but I wanted to highlight that was part of this change as well. So the line 34 will no longer serve Braddock Road Metro. Instead, it will be going up to Potomac Yard.
Martin, I could jump in, and I believe Linda also may have a question. There was some commentary this evening, and there were some communications that were forwarded to you all that came in over the weekend of concerns along the line 34. And I would just say that one thing that would be helpful to clarify, the process for teaching the bus operators a new route goes on for quite some time and goes on throughout the day, at different times of the day, different days of the week. And so what some of the residents there have been reacting to has been drivers learning the route. And there has been some commentary of the buses can't make the turns, they're having trouble, those kinds of things. Well, it would be very normal in this situation for the drivers to having to become acclimated to the configuration of the intersection. And I think also Martin and his team and the city teams are working together to make the modifications to the intersection, including the parking removals, which may come later. So I think there's just wanted to offer those two clarities in case you were looking at some of those communications and kind of wondering what's the story here. That's what that's about. We're starting training before the intersection is reconfigured, which should help to also reduce some of those concerns that those residents have been expressing. And what they're seeing right now is that practice period prior to the service going into play. So we'll continue to monitor that situation and make sure that our teams are coordinating, and we work very closely with the team and Hillary to figure out if there are any tweaks that need to be made in order to ensure that people aren't ending up in situations where they're having a standoff, as we call it, which I was always taught as a bus operator, when you're in a standoff, the bus operator does not move. Because it's much less safe for a bus operator to navigate a bus around a car than it is for a car to go ahead and move around the bus. And you may hear some of those irritations, and there may be some vocalization of, oh, a car had to back up or whatnot. That happens all over the city. It's kind of normal with buses. But we're going to do our best to make sure we address that. So just want to add that. But I saw your hand go up.
Oh, I had a really minor question. Originally, the south entrance was going to open later than the north entrance. Are they both opening at the same time now, or? Oh, okay.
I just had a comment. I love this website, Potomac Yard, that you guys have in the maps. They're so helpful. So kudos to your team for putting that together to make it easy to read and people understand like these are where stops are going to be. There's no longer a stop. Then I'm happy to hear there's going to be a Spanish page, so that's awesome too. So kudos to you and your team for that.
Yeah, so traffic and parking board had approved some removal of spaces to facilitate the service. So those parking restrictions go into effect the same day the service begins. Is that?
If not before.
Some of the signs been installed this week. So
okay.
Yeah.
And we'll also evaluate the location of the stop bar. You may know some intersections stop bars will move back a little bit so that when a car pulls up to the stop, they don't pull it too far in the intersection. So that movement may also help on that turning. If the cars are stopped back a couple of feet, that will allow the operator to turn better. So we've done that in other areas where we run into that trouble.
You all feel confident in terms of with coordination that you're going to get any changes that you need at that?
I think between Dash and the city, it's very seamless.
Okay.
It happens all the time. It's not unique to this situation.
Yeah, no, I think it's just important to have that on the record that,
Yeah.
that those conversations are going well and that we help support.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item I have here is the 395 Commuter Choice Program update. We brought this item to you guys a couple of times, but I want to provide positive update that our 3 projects are all in the staff recommendations that the NBTC reviewed, I think, last week. The working group had seen it before that. NBCC saw it I think last week, or yeah, it was last week, I think. And it will go to the Colorado Transportation Board next month. So we are anticipating that we will be awarded the line 35 improvements, line 36 improvements. Those are existing projects. And then we also applied for some electric buses that we larger electric buses, articulated electric buses for line 35 to add capacity in the West End. We're not getting the full request we got for those. We are getting a couple buses for that as well. So although we're concerned, it's looking much better now. We still have to get through the final approval, but that's good news. And we're also continuing to do our outreach. The actual comment period for this ends on Monday, so we are still pushing, reaching out to community groups and riders to kind of continue to advocate for these routes. Even though it's looking good, we want to make sure that we show the benefit for next time and going forward. So good news on that front.
So I asked Bob Vernonberg sent a letter on behalf of Park Fairfax, and I thanked him for doing that. He said you told him he had to. I don't know what you held over his head. He said he did because he made.
Okay, and then the last item I have here, I'm going to be kind of brief. That there is some details in the memo about the Better Bus Network, Vermont's regional bus network redesign project. Have kind of laid out some of the major changes that will affect or potentially affect Alexandria in their aspirational network. This is phase 2 of 3 phases. Phase 2 is the aspirational network. Phase 3 will be in the fall, where they come up with a more implementable network that they would seek to put in place in FY25. So we're kind of in the second of 3 phases right now. The reason that I'm not going to go into too much depth tonight is that we've actually arranged for the June board meeting that will have Al Hines from Alana, who's actually a Dash alum, to come and do a full presentation for the board. So I'll let you more details then. And although that's beyond the deadline for their public comment period, they've assured us that any feedback the board has, they'll be able to incorporate that as well. But yeah.
Thank you, Martin, for arranging that, because that was something Josh and I talked about just a couple of days ago, and that's great that it's in place. Is that something we can also advertise, that participation of the community? Because I think if that becomes sort of the Alexandria outreach, we're so spoiled because of the job that you all did on the ATV in terms of being everywhere bus riders needed to be to have input. And WMATA covers a much larger service area, but this is an opportunity for, I think, the public to become more educated about it too. If we can use some of our marketing and communication at channels to advertise that availability for people, I think that would be really helpful with WMATA coming already. I mean, it may not be able to take public comment, or we might be able to do that and then have public comment period after people can weigh in on that. Then we can talk about how to set up the meeting for that. But I think it'd be great to get more than just our perspectives. That, so
maybe at a minimum, kind of some social media outreach and maybe news item on our website that
Yeah.
some of the bigger changes.
There are some. I mean, we talked about they are broader than we had thought they would.
Right. For Alexandria.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we've reached the end of the public agenda, so we have an executive session that will be here. I'll announce before we close the public portion of the meeting. Our next meeting is on June 14th, 5:30 p.m. and we're going to be at the Dash facility for that meeting. So there are motions for the executive session. So if anyone would like to make them, they're I think we all have them at our table. So if anybody would like to just read them, we can make a motion.
Because I cut off Murat last time, I handed him mine and going to give the motion, so. You're welcome.
I'll honor that gesture that you had. I, Murat Omai, hereby move the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A6 of the Code of Virginia.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Matt, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, who moved?
Come on.
He read all of that.
She must have spaced out.
All right, so we stand in recess to convene the executive session, and we'll make sure that our 2 board members who are remote are able to continue participating. Thank you, staff, for being here. Great work. Congratulations, Ray, Stephanie, on your.
And there's board members and staff members. There's Panera in here, so please take some for family members. And if you could give us maybe a 3 to 4 minute break to collect some of the items, let folks get out of the room, and then we'll get the Zoom broadcast stopped, and then we'll let you know when we're ready to start the conversation.
While you do that, I also want to thank everyone for accommodating us last time. The Alexandria Transportation Commission meeting was actually at the Dash facility, and I think, Josh, you had a conflict, but Beth and Raymond and everyone else, they were very nice and hospital. Is that a word? Hospital.
Hospital, yeah, we were happy to have you. We were happy to have you. And got me sorted.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, Josh, we no longer have any attendees and you should be the host now.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate your help. I don't know if you work from home today. There's a large internet.
Yeah.
When I came back, yeah, to the city, I was in Baltimore
You
today.
guys aren't soon?
No, I came back to City Hall.
Oh, see, okay.
I was like 3. and I
Yeah.
was a cell phone.
Yeah, thanks.
There was a fiber cut.
When I had the city.
Fiber cut.
Cyber cut, like it was crazy.
Oh, stop. Okay, so I was like, if they're doing work, wouldn't they have?
It was not an intentional fiber cut.
Okay.
Oh, a king?
I think it's a Comcast line.
Oh,
It's what?
The Comcast line.
let's see mobile though. They must like share stuff.
Yeah, I think
They
I
must
think-
share. Oh.
How,
Had
how,
no
I mean, I knew it was a
social
lot of old town, but I didn't know.
I don't know where else it's at.
Oh, okay.
Is there some crazy backstory on Ting? Like, I'm totally mystified, but they did like my whole neighborhood.
They did? Oh,
Yeah.
They got the contract.
What? Do
They
it?
got the contract as one of the
They're one of the
alternate
competitors.
competitors.
I
Yeah.
think there's more coming.
It's
Really?
big.
Because I think you can't only have one.
Yeah.
you have to let-
They
Oh, DSL or fiber.